Hi, friend. I'm really glad you're here. Before we even start, I want to say that the reason I'm doing this series is in direct response to what's happening in America and how it's affecting the world globally. I find it difficult to watch and listen to so many content creators not discussing what's actually happening in the world and the turmoil and the fear. But when 2025 rolled around and I saw what was happening, and I switched my content because I'm a professional artist and I've been so my entire life. I've worked in Rodeo Drive, I've worked in high-end galleries, I've sold thousands of pieces of my own art, I've created a fashion business, and I have a lot I could teach you about those sort of things. And I love doing it. But I also love personal development, which has been my private work since the early 90s. And I was getting actually snail mail letters from my past students asking me to come back and bring some of this shamanic or esoteric wisdom traditions around the tremendous lies that are going on now. And this isn't usually how I start any of my vlogs, but I just want to say that I feel it tremendously. And this is my response, in direct response, spiritually, karmically, and cross-culturally, how traditions hold these sort of things. So you can hopefully get strength from them. That's why I'm doing it. This week is the fifth in the series of thought forms, how our thinking, our willing, and our deeds create karma and ramifications and consequences for ourselves. And the title of this week is The Dark Winds, Nemesis Unleashed, Karma, Conscience, and the Price of Violence. And if you haven't been watching the series Dark Winds or read any of the Tony Hillerman novels, I highly recommend them. Today is a whopper. When I watched it, I actually stood watching it. I couldn't sit down. I was so riveted watching Joe Leaphorn struggling with his conscience over some grievous deeds and his question if he could come back into harmony when fate strikes him a blow and he crosses the threshold. And remember last week, in fact, this whole series has been about that we live in two worlds, what we call the earth world, the ordinary reality world, and many people can cross into the other world or non-ordinary reality. And this is what Joe Leaphorn does. So is he dead? Is he dreaming? Is he in purgatory? The atmosphere is chilling. Violence, distortion, disconnection are rising, but it is a call to awaken conscience, courage, and karmic clarity. So a few months ago, I did a vlog on the Hero Twins from a big dream I had in 1995. And it doesn't seem like many people were interested in this Navajo creation story or the dream. But I think you might be very interested in this particular Dark Winds episode produced by Robert Redford. The episode is titled What We Were Told, and it is one of the top 10 on my spirit reel chilling list. We find a disoriented Joe Leaphorn as he travels through a visionary tale drawn from the Navajo Hero Twins' sacred journey, a reckoning with fate, conscience, and the monstrous yitots, which I mispronounced, I'm sure, or means big God that haunts his soul. So all cultures, as we know, have stories of ghosts, vengeful spirits, and divine retribution. In the Greek culture, the Furies, also known as the Erinyes, Erinyes, are terrifying goddesses who punished murder and broken oaths, especially within families. So every tradition and religion speaks of spirits of reckoning. And Rudolf Steiner has a quote, when a person is on the point of doing something wrong, they may perceive a demonic form that warns them away. It's actually the spiritual picture of their deed, what they're thinking about doing. And this is the sort of world that Joe, and I'm not going to give you any spoilers because, oh, it's so good. It is so good. I've watched it twice so far, and I just watched it 2 nights ago. I am in awe of this episode and how they did it. Also, I have to say that when I went and spoke to the elders, the Zuni elder actually at Zuni Pueblo, about the Hero Twins, he gave me a direction of study to unpack this dream I had of the Hero Twins. And maybe I'll go into that at the end of the vlog, and we'll see, because there's something within this that is part of the Navajo culture and their deep wisdom traditions, but it's also found in the Grail stories as well and all over the world. And I'm pointing to that. So we'll see if I reveal that at the end. So again, we're going back to us. If we do something evil, Joe Leaphorn says in this that if you kill somebody, you bear the burden of them your entire life. And he has experiences that are so beautiful of what we would call a Kamaloca, which is in Christian traditions, that's heaven and hell, purgatory. But every tradition has this. The Tibetan Buddhists have the realm of the hungry ghosts, where when we die, we are no longer, I would no longer be Kristena West. I would be like a homeopathic dose of what I did or didn't do in this life. But I become what we term my higher self, a much greater being. And those doors are blocked while we're in the body, thankfully, because then we get to see that this life is real. And we think that might be all there is. But the reason I'm doing this vlog on thought forms is to give people from all traditions, because I'm approaching it cross-culturally, from religious traditions, from shamanic traditions, from Native American traditions, and Tibetan and Hindu. I mean, I'm trying to give you pictures that you see this is sort of wisdom is embedded in our cultures. And nobody wants to hear the word moral anymore. So Joe enters what I would call a surreal, like the surrealist painters, a surreal world in which his past deeds confront him. What he did, he has interactions with. And this is done so well, so beautifully. Again, I was standing up watching it, and I watched it one night and the next night. It is so well done. And again, this is Dark Winds. And I really urge you to watch the entire series, because you fall in love with the characters, of course, but you also see the arc, their narrative arc, how we react to terrible things and what the consequences of those are. And what's so marvelous about Dark Winds is because it's Navajo and they have native writers, that they're giving us pictures of that culture that is so rich, deep, and healing. Even if we're witnessing some terrible deeds, and they're law enforcement, of course, so we know there's what goes on there, murders and so forth. But if we telescope that over the world today, actually happening, the lies that are created now that are actually killing people because of the laws that are being implemented. This is real murder that's happening around us. And because we live in a society now with tremendous fast news, we can't handle so much of it. We begin to normalize it. So this blog in thought forms is to give you a different way, hopefully, of seeing how the world soul is the recording angel, as we say in the Christian terms. Thoth would be the recording deity in Egyptian lore. This is, you can't get away from your karma. Karma will get you, and karma will get all of us. But this struggle with Joe Leaphorn, so this surreal world that Joe enters of the yellow world, it's called, uh, spiked my interest, because in the Carlos Castaneda books, he talks about entering this yellow world as well. So that's just a little curious detail to follow up on for those who might be interested. So Steiner has a lot to say about Kamaloca when we die, that if we strike a blow, if we hit somebody, or if we publicly humiliate somebody, when we die and we're in the other worlds, you have to remember you're not who you think you are now. You're somebody who's tremendously aware and awake. And you feel you become the other person who gets the blow that you threw at them. And you feel not only the pain and the suffering of that blow, you feel the humiliation. And you begin to see how karma was formed and how you're going to have to make that right. And in the Leaphorn, in the Navajo, they call it coming back into harmony or coming back into balance. They may even call it coming back into the beauty way. Because I've worked with shamans since the 90s, I've integrated this understanding that when a shaman does a healing for somebody and they're working on a human being, they see the illness as a little demon or a spider or whatever that the dictionary of the shaman perceives as not good. So working with spiritual pictures for me is, as an artist, this is what we do as artists. We think in pictures. This episode is so brilliantly done. And I think it could stand alone on its own, just watching it. The acting was so brilliant. The depth of the story was so deep and grievous and troublesome and on point, but also the the surreal nature of one scene moving into another, or just don't want to do any spoilers, but let's, for instance, say you kill somebody and you're sitting there contemplating your deed, and the person just gets up and starts talking to you about what you just did to them and how you're not figuring it out accurately. I mean, this is a brilliant, we could even call it a hell state because it's the judgment. This is why we see so many angels in all the religions and traditions, from Saint Michael to Mott, weighing the feather of the heart to see if you're pure or not. And this is our karmic retribution in this episode of Leaphorn. So this episode explores the forces that come when moral order is broken. The big god, because I'm not going to mispronounce it one more time. The big god and the hero twins, to the furies, to Nemesis, to the hungry ghost, and the karma we carry through time. Whether through physical violence or emotional abuse, the karmic price is real. Our thinking and deeds of ill will have immutable consequences, and our family ghosts walk with us or walk beside us. Shall I say that again? Our thinking and deeds of ill will have immutable consequences, and our family ghosts walk beside us. So Rudolf Steiner said that our consciousness is going to evolve, and this was 100 years ago. Harvard Divinity School is actually doing a 100-year anniversary of Rudolf Steiner's spiritual science. And there's a nod to Harvard and what's going on also in the world today. But Steiner said that our consciousness is evolving, and starting about 1933, we're going to have a shift in consciousness. And part of this is precognitive experiences. As I've said, I'm a precognitive dreamer, but dreaming is only the beginning of it. But also that we'll get these experiences of seeing pictures. If we are thinking of doing a bad deed, we might see a witch in front of us or a demon that will show us the consequences of that deed. But also that if we're considering doing something that is beautiful and giving and harmonious, we may also see a picture of the beauty of that deed. So in so many traditions, we have lords of karma, real deities that are lords of karma, of the moral order, keeping track of the moral order. And the Hero Twins, uh, in this episode of Dark Winds, when Joe crosses the threshold, he sees it looks like the Navajo school. He's watching a play of the Hero Twins, at which point I started standing up and I didn't sit down till the episode was over. So hats off to the writers and Robert Redford for producing this marvelous show. Within the mystery traditions, cross-culturally, is actually found one of the hooks for human beings, which is a misuse, not just of power, of violence, physical and emotional abuse, but also sexuality, a misuse of sexuality. And here comes the reveal that I was talking about, is that there is a very big problem with sexual misuse. And I don't need to go into the world drama of that. But if we're thinking of thought forms, and here's a picture of a thought form of a piece of music. In Tibetan Buddhism, we have the realm of the hungry ghosts, which is very detailed mandalas of the wheel of life and what happens when we die. And these stories of purgatory and hell are embedded all over the world. So you might want to think about everything that you do has consequences. And idea of thought forms, and I'm going to show you the musical thought forms, the operas of Wagner and other composers, so that you start understanding that you are creating a thought form every day in your thinking, feeling, and willing, and whatever you're thinking about that day. And is it anger? Is it happiness? Is it joy? Is it harmony? Is it out of control? Is it fear? Is it getting on social media and ranting at people? You're creating thought forms. I am creating thought forms. We are creating thought forms. The twins come to set the world to rights, the Hero Twins. And again, if you listen to my vlog on the Hero Twins, the big dream that I had, they journey to the sun and are given gifts by their father, the sun, which is the lightning bolts. And you see that also in this Dark Winds episode. And I was thrilled, absolutely thrilled to watch it. To me, it was top 10 of the really chilling, spiritually real what we could face consequences. Now, obviously, this is a drama and they wrote this, but it is so well done. And I'm going to point again to this sexual wound that we're all facing. And when I wrote my book on alchemy, which was from the men and women's groups that I started teaching in the early 90s, because PhD students from Pacifica Graduate Institute were taking my classes and they said, Kristena, we don't know how to do a group. And I had 2 years council circle training based on Native American council circle that came actually from Findhorn. And so I started teaching how to lead a group authentically, professionally, and what group dynamics looks like. When I was writing the book on gender reconciliation for men and women, because I'd been teaching it and leading these very deep shadow, we worked on our shadow aspects. There was a book that was just released by Richard Sipes, if I'm remembering that accurately. And he was a priest who had become a therapist. And he was one of the first people writing about the sexual abuse within the church. And this is a picture of this sexual wound that we find even in the Grail legends, that Amfortas, the king, has a wound in his testicles that will not heal. And these are spiritual pictures of real wounds within the human psyche. And you could think about, what does the thought form over Las Vegas look like? What does the thought form over your house look like? What does the thought form over you look like? So again, this is Thought Form, Series 5, and this is the Entrance into Kamaloca. What's going to happen when we die and face the real consequences of our misdeeds, our evil, our leading others astray, but also people in positions of power who have reversed truth into lies and are projecting that over a world political field that good is bad and bad is good, and what happens in the human soul. So I'm going to read an experience somebody had. This is in my Olaf Ostesen, in my Holy Nights Art and Dream Retreat. I'm going to read this for you. In 2002 in Berkeley, I did an exhibition with 10 or 12 artists, Deities, Dialogues, and Dreams, Extraordinary Conversations with Ordinary People. And this show was based on the work that I've done since the 90s with my private clients and groups, is pretty much everybody has had a spiritual experience. And if they don't know how to integrate that, spiritual experiences are typically pointing to helping us reveal something in our life that's hidden from us, or a gift that could help us in our right livelihood. So this is the rich field of working with spiritual experiences. And this is what the show is. I'll put the link in the vlog as we go forward. But in my Olaf Ostesen class, I put in, because he's having a spiritual experience for 12 holy nights, he's going through the realm of the dead. And the Olaf Ostesen is for holy nights, an opportunity for people to have an experience of that for themselves. And in this Olaf Ostesen experience, this class for holy nights, which is only released once a year, you have an opportunity to take somebody who has died that year and pray for them as you go through the art and the poem. So you see, this is what happens with Joe Leaphorn is so dear to my heart. And dear to my heart doesn't do it. It is a call and response to what I'm looking for in the world that will heal me. So again, I thank you. I thank you. I thank you, Dark Winds. Okay, I'm going to read this now. So this happened to Michael Brown. This happened to Michael Brown. And this is coming in on his conversation. Anyway, I was a 31-year-old writer doing what he had always aspired to do. Writing, appearing on national TV, lecturing at colleges for excessive fees, and making enough money to live in a luxury high-rise and eat in the ritzy cafes every night of the week. I was what you might call a swinging bachelor. I admired people like Hugh Hefner. I'm not proud of it. I wasn't an evil person, but I certainly wasn't good. And one Friday night that September, after coming home earlier than usual, I fell asleep and awoke because of an amazing dream. In the dream, I was on a bed that was like a hospital gurney, and it was in my foyer facing the door of my 12th floor apartment. Around me were 3 or 4 spirits with their hands over me, 2 on each side as if they were praying. I wasn't allowed to look at them, but I had the impression they were thin, pencil-like figures of light who could appear in any form they wanted. They were uttering what seemed like an ancient language. "Who are you?" I asked one of them on my left, who seemed to be in charge. "My name is Michael," said this entity, for lack of a better term. "Now look." And he indicated toward the door. And on that door, I saw the most frightening thing of my life, the face of the devil, or a major demon, edged and yet alive, living, sneering, and full of hatred I had never before seen, and I could not hope to adequately describe. I woke up in a sweat. I paced for a while, probably had a cigarette back then. I looked out the window. Below, the last of the stragglers were leaving the cafes along 3rd Avenue. It was probably between 3 and 4 a.m. Finally, I got back to sleep, but immediately lapsed into the same dream. And it didn't seem like a dream, more like a vision. It continued where it had left off. I told you, look, said the one who had called himself Michael. Now say, vanish. I could never imitate the power behind those words. Instantly, his words had made that awful, evil face on the door, the hollowed cheeks, the pointy goatee disappear. I didn't have the courage or the faith to do what he said. Instead, I woke up, and this time I was the most terrified of my life. It was far scarier than anything the mafia or haunted houses could dish up. It was probably close to an hour I was smoking and wanting to call someone, pacing. But who was I going to call? At the time, my two best friends were reporters for the New York Times, which had, for all practical purposes, meant they were atheists. Finally, I forced myself back to sleep, and the dream again continued where it had left off. The one who said he was Michael told me again to say, vanish. Somehow I came up with the faith. I came up with the courage. When the awful face materialized, I raised my right hand and shouted, vanish! Suddenly, and to my amazement, the face disappeared, and so did the angels. And I got up from the gurney and I walked to the door. As I did, I could see where the face had been. There was now a set of keys. And when I took them and looked at them, I had been brushing up against evil in many ways, and now the devil was at my door. It was part of my coming back to Christ. Michael H. Brown. So I think that gives you a picture of how the spiritual worlds brings us what we would call nightmares. And what he had wasn't actually a nightmare. This is my interpretation. I think he was crossing the threshold into the other world, and he was given by spirit beings a real experience of what he was up against, that he was at a threshold in the karma of his life. But I think to consider now the hero twins' journey of going to the sun, who was their father, who gives them the two lightning bolts, the flashing lightning and the bolt lightning, and how they came back to the earth and conquered the evil or the demons. So the secret that I've been alluding to is the hidden mystery wisdom tradition that the elder pointed me to, the Zuni elder, for research, was that there was an imbalance in the sexuality that needed to be handled. And this is something the hero twins were given a task of doing. And we see that also in Durga coming and setting the world to rights. We see that in the Grail legends, Parzival having to go through all his trials, his spiritual trials, and eventually he asks the king the compassionate question, what ails thee, O king? And through his compassion of living into another, Parzival then becomes eventually the Grail King himself. And that's another spiritual picture of when we confront our karmic deeds and bring them back into alignment, we too become the king and queen in a real spiritual deep way, what we would call our higher selves. And this is, of course, over time and eventually many, many incarnations. So to weave this back into the Hero Twins, thank you so much, Dark Winds and Robert Redford, for this marvelous tale again. So blessings on us this week as we have entered the war, or have we entered a war? And what are the consequences of the lies and the deeds that are happening now? And how do we respond actively in a way that's filled with authenticity and confidence in the spiritual worlds that goodness may become? So this is Kristena West signing off for Series 5 on Thought Forms. You're listening to the podcast. Thanks for listening. Do go to the vlog because I always put in paintings that are showing theme of the week. And this week's theme is the Dark Winds, Nemesis Unleashed, Karma, Conscience, and the Price of Violence. Yes. And ho to Darkwind's staff and the writers and Robert Redford. Thank you so much. Marvelous vision that I have taken into my heart. I'll see you next week. I've been having requests for booking private sessions, and you can see that on the link below this blog. So thanks so much, and thanks to our Hero Twins for setting the world to rights. Remember, we have our ancestors we can contact on the other side who help us all the time, our guardian angels, however you term that in whatever culture you're in. And this is the week that we pray to seed goodness into the world as evil is becoming. Let's get creative.